Now, I'll admit I got into Evangelion quite late. In fact, I started watching the original series after the last Rebuild movie came out. So yeah, didn't even get a chance to take part in that. However, in spite of that, I found a genuine love and fondness for the old 90s show, probably because it feels like the shows of my childhood, seeing as I loved 90s shows and all the early 2000 cartoon and animated shows growing up. And with End of Evangelion, I found myself amazed by how great it was and the feelings it invoked in me. From viewing it, it corresponded even greater than the show in my personal opinion. So hearing the Rebuild movies were a thing and being heavily invested in the show and End of Evangelion, I went and spent a bit less of a week watching them all, and I must admit my disappointment for them, and I'll go into detail on them as it just leaves me a bit confused, I suppose. Now, to start off, we're going to start with Evangelion 1.01, or as I watched all of them, the 1.11 director cut versions. You are not alone. If I'd gone into this movie without the knowledge that it was mostly recap, I think I'd be a bit more upset with this and score it lower. But overall, I found enjoyment in it. It was, after all, just Evangelion before shit hits the fan, really, and sucked me back into the story with some slight changes that I didn't mind at the time, but now I'm wondering, like, why did Misato show Shinji Lilith? Looking at it from the later movies, it doesn't make much sense going on, and I suppose it's because it just seems to want to cram a lot of information into the films to try and help the viewer, but it messes up here, as well as getting much worse with the info dumping in later films. Also, I know times in animation have changed from the 90s to even just the 2000s till now in the current present of 2022, but I don't feel like the animation really captured the feel of Eva. It doesn't have the right tone of Evangelion in my opinion. Like, the shading and colours, that I don't know, it felt like richer and not as, like, I don't know the right words, but I guess grimy maybe would be the right word, because it felt like in the old show, even just the shots of like the landscape and that, you could feel like the griminess of the summer heat and all that type of stuff, whereas in this one it just feels like a almost generic style of anime film animation that kind of doesn't really match it. And also, I've been a bit nitpicky, but aside from the usual sounds and music effects they used, a lot of the others felt misused or overused, and I miss the subtlety of the environmental sounds. Overall though, I don't find it too bad, and I'd give it like a 7 out of 10. Moving on to 2.22, You Cannot Advance. Overall, this film follows along from episode 8 to 19 loosely, and I do mean loosely, and is easily the best Rebuild movie. It definitely has its merits. The action was good and thrilling for the most part, and the scenes with Shinji and everyone having fun hurt my heart because I knew what was to come. I also like the way it showed how he makes connections with both Rei and Asuka, but the way they feel is different for both of the reasons that they wanted to cook for him and the heart Asuka has. And the bed scene with her and Shinji, I felt like it was overall really well done, and I really liked how they handled it, and the change that Asuka was made to be the one in the Eva for the showdown instead of Toji made it quite a bit more original than in the original show in my opinion. Obviously still not a fan of the newer animation style, but I found it bearable in this movie. But the fact this movie brought Marie as a sin that can't be overlooked. Seriously, she's pretty harmless in this movie though. But my enjoyment in the later films gets much worse, and I suppose I'll wait till the last film before I bash her existence, I guess. I'd give this movie an 8 out of 10. It doesn't do anything overly bad, has quite a bunch of emotional feats in it that responded greater than the show, so yeah, I feel like that's a fair rating in my opinion. Now, 3.33 You Cannot Redo. Now, admittedly, I have a lot of problems with this movie. The time skip felt unneeded, and that first battle section went on for far too fucking long. Jesus, it took up too much of the movie. Also, I get that Shinji caused the near third impact, but outside of the younger characters, the way he's treated by the crew was, like, seriously so infuriating. Like, honestly, like, Misato knows that the world would be over if Shinji hadn't fought as he does. Heck, Ritsuko and Jesus, Asuka should have been the one punched, acting like he asked to be out of commission for 14 years on top of the impact, and it's no wonder that Shinji abandons them. They forget that whilst physically he's also mentally 14, and he just gets shoved into this world where he's getting dog-hounded on by, well, not dog-hounded, he's getting made to feel more and more worthless without being given a reason, and when they do give a reason, they don't offer him anything other than suck it up, really. And so it's no surprise when the new Ray comes for him, he just dips. Like, seriously, it was so unsurprising, and it really annoys me. Now moving on to when Shinji gets taken to nerve by the substitute Ray, it gets to the best part of the film in my honest opinion, as he interacts with Ray and Kaoru and sort of finds himself not really being able to be comfortable with Ray, and the bond that he forges with Kaoru through music is truly touching, as the way they communicated from it was best described through the imagery and how you could feel the bond, and then obviously with them bonding with the stars and that, you could feel a genuine connection in that with him. And I like how they communicated so well through that, yet when it comes to actual communication with the ending of it, it falls through, and quite tragic, I suppose, as obviously we know what it's going to lead to. I also have a problem with Willie spells out Willie, but yeah, I can't remember how the proper pronunciation right now, but I find it quite ironic that we're meant to be rooting for them, and yet I found myself rooting for Nerve because of how unlikable they all come off. But I would give the movie a 7 out of 10, but say it's worse than 1.1 because the parts that argued are so sought in comparison to the drag of the first part and the obnoxious character butchering of all the familial faces that are on Willie. Is it Will or Willie? I can't mind. Yeah. Moving on to 3.0 plus 1.0, Thrice Upon a Time, and oh boy, wow, this movie sucks a lot of what made Eva just great out of it. Like, the first half of the film, with Shinji's depression being the only part that felt really well done, and obviously, like, the action looks cool, right, we get that, you know, that they've got a budget, woohoo, and all that, but it felt completely meaningless in comparison to what the film portrays. Also, Toji's sister slaps Shinji and has a tantrum because he piloted an Eva, and she did talk about it in 3.33, but I have a question, were we meant to give a fuck about her feelings and the feelings of the other Willie members? Because they are so poorly done, it's laughable. I guess she probably has a fear of Emma stemming back to when she got put in a hospital and obviously the near third impact and stuff, but they don't do anything to make us care about that, or the fact that she and generic pink-haired girl want to shoot Shinji because Misato gives him the go-ahead at the end and stuff. Also, I think what they did with the newer Rei, her character arc was pretty good, but her dying just kind of sucked any of the enjoyment out of it, as we didn't really get much of her. Also, I don't know why they decided to butch Asuka. You know, like, she goes from being someone that, well, it's obviously rash, wanting to be seen and all that, and just, like, you know, all of, like, the emotions of our original character, to just, like, just a cunt, really. And I don't know what the reason for that change was, and it's very disappointing. It was interesting to see how they backpedaled on Misato, I suppose, and I did enjoy her send-off. But moving on to perhaps the more pressing part, Shinji confronting his father I want to say it felt rather anticlimactic, though I suppose you could argue that it feels good to finally get Gendo's say as well as Shinji's to each other, as we don't really ever get that in the original series or end of Evangelion. And it's also could be considered interesting to explore that and stuff, but I'm going to move on to the part that I really want to do, and that is the Mary bashing. I have never been so annoyed at a character existing just for the sake of being a Mary Sue since Rey Palpatine. That bitch doesn't deserve the Skywalker name. She survives everything, and the only thing I can say about her is that she somehow wound up being the one to be with Shinji. Granted, going back to this timeline, no one but Kaoru should really be in consideration with the scenes, but she has a big rack and calls him Puppy Boy, I guess. Seriously, so frustrated. I wouldn't mind if she was an actual character, but they quite literally brought her in to be little fan service and have shitty one-liners and take time away from the characters we care about. I also feel bittersweet about this movie, and I'm certainly glad I watched it. And I'd give it like a 6 out of 10, but that could change and might be only because I don't have more Eva to consume that I'm being kind to it. I suppose I'm like most Eva fans, having a love-hate relationship with this series. Whilst there was definitely flaws with the original and end of Evangelion, it never felt as bad as what the rebuilds did to conclude its final chapter. I have so many questions as to how it turned out this way, and why it feels like the final message of these movies contradict the original series, which is you're worthy of love, you know, especially from yourself. Social interaction can be painful, but you need to connect with other people in order to be happy. Don't be afraid, don't run away. That message. But in this, instead of it, it feels like it's like, this is the end, grow up, go outside, touch grass, shit like that. It feels like the creator just doesn't care about the message anymore and changed shit for money. I wasn't sure the rebuild movies could live up to the original series and end of Evangelion movie, but I never expected to be so like downtrodden and disappointed in what came out of these movies, and I didn't think that we could be let down by the creator like this. I've not touched up on the noticeable plot holes between the films post 2.22 to 3.0 plus 1.0, because like, how does the near third impact and all that happen when we see Kaoru stop it, and why is there all these new Evas and that, and where are you getting the resources for all this, and how, like, they don't exactly explain well how Nerve's bringing back the world's resources and stuff, and we're just meant to believe it just because. But I suppose it's because, just like the creator, I just don't care anymore to go on about it, and it's upsetting really, because it was such a great series, and these movies could have been something special, but they weren't. I guess if there's ever any Eva in the future, however unlikely it may be, we can't be hopeful, though I wish to be. Anyway guys, that's the end of this video. If you enjoyed, please like, comment and subscribe, all that usual stuff. I'll see you in the next video, and the Nightmare on Elm Street retrospective, if not up before this, should be up relatively soon. Peace out.